Welcome to the Radiant Naturopathic video wellness series. My name is Dr. Jean Carlson, and today we'll be talking about what is a whole food and why should I care. So first we're going to take a look at all of our beautiful foods that we have laid out on the table right here, some of which are whole foods and some of which are not. So the first question is, what is a whole food? A whole food is basically something that you can imagine growing out of the ground or falling off of a tree or being taken off of an animal the way that it existed in nature. So examples of whole foods are things like whole fruits and vegetables, nuts and seeds, eggs, meats, and certain dairy products are also whole foods. So let's look at our whole foods, and we're going to talk about them one by one. So first, we've got asparagus. Asparagus is a whole food. It looks exactly the same bundled up in the grocery store as it did coming out of the ground. We also have carrots, peaches, and a yam here. These are all also whole foods. All of these items have come out of the ground or fallen from a tree and look exactly the way that they do in the store as they did coming out of where they were from. Sun-dried tomatoes are actually also an example of a whole food. The only thing that's been done to a sun-dried tomato is that the water has been taken out of it. All the fiber is still preserved and all the nutrients are still preserved in the sun-dried tomato. What about dried white peaches? Dried white peaches are actually also whole foods. They've only had the water content taken out. So the nutrient content of dried white peach is basically the same as a whole peach. The only difference is in the dried peaches there's a whole lot more sugar, because imagine eating 3 or 4 of these versus one of these. Which one's going to fill you up faster? Our next examples are nuts and seeds. Pistachios fell off the tree, basically looking like this. They have been salted, so that's the only difference. So if these were unsalted, they would be considered whole foods. Salted, they're somewhere on the border of being a whole food or not. Sesame seeds, these are brown sesame seeds, are not processed in any way. So these are also examples of whole foods. Whereas we have organic tahini right next to it, and tahini has been, the sesame seeds have been crushed up and they've been modified so that the fiber is in smaller particles so that you can get more oil out of the tahini than you can out of the sesame seeds. So this is not an example of a whole food. Likewise, peanut butter has the same process done to it. It's been ground up and the fiber has been reduced to smaller particles. So it's actually not an example of a whole food. Then we have spices, and we have green tea here as well. Spices, most spices look exactly the same as they did on the tree or growing out of the ground. And green tea, the leaves are exactly the same as they were on the tree. However, they've been dried. Any spice basically has been dried unless you're using it in its fresh form, but it's still an example of a whole food. What about this guy? We've got a little bar here of Miracle Reds. These are not whole foods. Any bar product like this, any protein product or whole foods bar, is actually not whole foods. They've been ground up, some of the fiber is lost, and some of the nutrients are lost in the process of grinding them up and putting them into the bar form. Let's talk about grains. Many people think grains are whole foods, but some of them aren't. White rice, for example, is not a whole food. It's been refined, so the bran has been taken off, and it's also been bleached, so it looks whiter. What about brown rice? Brown rice is a whole food. It's exactly the same as it came out of the ground, growing off the plant. And then we have rice flour. Rice flour is not a whole food. This has been processed, ground up, and most of the fiber and nutrient content is lost. In addition to not having the nutrients in the outer hull of the rice shell, because this is made from white rice. So all those nutrients are lost. What about coconut milk? Is that a whole food? Actually not. The milk is only one part of the coconut. There's a whole lot more of the coconut that has fiber, the meaty part of the coconut. And this is mostly just the inner milk and the water. Tomato paste, put it up here, is also not a whole food. The tomatoes have been ground up, they've been stewed, and they've been reduced to only certain nutrients as opposed to the entire tomato, which we don't have an example of here. Brown rice cakes, also not a whole food. They've been processed, heated, and packed into cakes, which loses nutrients. Same with pastas. All pastas have been processed, ground up, some of them have been bleached, and most of them, the fiber is almost completely gone. Most pasta is just the sugary part of the grain. Likewise, we have some trail mix here that's basically been made into granola. Granola is also not a whole food. It's been heated, it's been cooked, and most of those nutrients have been lost. There are a lot of alternative milks on the market right now, and alternative sort of crackers, none of which are whole foods. All of these have been processed, and none of them have the integrity of the original plant item. If you were to eat a handful of almonds, you would be eating a whole food, but not drinking just the milk, which has been pressed out of the whole almond. It has no fiber. And lastly, we come to our sweeteners. What about sweeteners? Are any of them whole foods? Actually, yes. Honey is one of the rare whole food sweeteners that is found in nature. There are only two that are naturally found: honey and maple syrup. Any kind of sugar product, however, is not whole food. All of these have been taken from the cane or from beets, pressed, processed, refined, and they've lost most of their fiber and most of their nutrient content. So those are all the examples of whole foods that we have for you today. And why should I bother? Why should I care about shopping for whole foods? Well, as we discussed earlier, when you're not eating whole foods, most of the nutrients have been lost. And so that's that many fewer nutrients that you can take into your body and help achieve optimal wellness. Thanks for watching. I'm Jean Lowe Carlson with Radiant Naturopathic Wellness Clinic.